Look at the sheer size of the RMS Titanic. The steel hull dwarfs the man sitting on the dock. In 1912, this was the absolute peak of human engineering. When it prepared to leave England for New York, thousands of people crowded the docks. Over 2,200 passengers and crew walked up those ramps, stepping onto what they believed was a perfectly safe machine. The builders literally printed their confidence on the promotional material. They called it the latest, largest, and finest steamer afloat. This absolute certainty created a psychological blind spot. The crew and the passengers believed so deeply in the ship's mechanical perfection that they stopped treating the ocean as a threat. By the night of April 14th, the environment outside the ship was a freezing, pitch-black expanse in the middle of the North Atlantic. Throughout the day, the ship's wireless operators received multiple explicit warnings from other vessels about dense ice in the water ahead. Driven by the pressure to maintain speed and their faith in the ship, the crew dismissed them. At 11:40 p.m., the lookout spotted a massive iceberg directly in their path. It emerged from the dark too fast and too close. Because they ignored the warnings, the crew had sailed blindly into a frozen trap at top speed. When the ship finally struck the ice, many passengers above deck barely felt it. Some described it as a faint vibration, like a train rolling over a switch. Beneath the waterline, the reality was entirely different. The ice sliced open the hull, and freezing water flooded the lower sections. It didn't stop at 2 compartments, it breached 5. The math was brutally simple. The design could survive 4 flooded compartments, but not 5. The moment that 5th compartment filled, the ship was mathematically dead. The remaining hours were just an inescapable waiting game. It took time for the danger to register. Passengers lingered in the warm lounges, confused, until the steel deck visibly began to tilt toward the water. There were over 2,200 people on board, yet the ship only carried enough lifeboats for half of them. This logistical gap would prove to be the White Star Line's most fatal oversight. The crew initiated a desperate evacuation protocol, loading women and children first. Husbands and fathers stepped back, saying goodbye to their families permanently. Because there was no contingency plan, an organized evacuation quickly dissolved into sheer terror as the freezing water climbed higher up the decks. The structural integrity of the massive ship held out for exactly 2 hours and 40 minutes. Under the extreme stress of thousands of tons of flooding water, the engineering marvel literally broke apart. The force tore the hull in half, sending a chaotic mass of people plunging into the sea. The stern rose into the air and then disappeared entirely beneath the freezing Atlantic, taking more than 1,500 lives down with it. The very ocean they believed they had conquered swallowed their greatest creation whole. What followed was a bleak, silent aftermath. A few isolated lifeboats floated in the dark, choppy waves, filled with freezing survivors waiting for help. Hours later, the RMS Carpathia finally arrived to pull the survivors from the water, and the horrifying news was transmitted back to the mainland. The reality of the sinking struck the public immediately. Newsboys sold broadsheets declaring the disaster on street corners, sending a shockwave of grief globally. But that shock quickly morphed into outrage. Global investigations exposed the specific, preventable human mistakes and the lack of safety regulations that caused so many to die. More than a century has passed since that night, yet the cultural memory of the Titanic remains potent. The story survives as a permanent psychological monument against human hubris, a warning about what happens when we place absolute faith in our own creations. No matter how advanced our technology becomes, or how profound our engineering pride, nature will always remain more powerful than us. If you want to explore more real stories of history's greatest triumphs and failures, subscribe now.